Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The failed drug cheat Jarrell Miller is again trying to finesse what happened with his performance-enhancing drug situation. So he's made some comments, which I'll get to, and then I want to check Miller because he is really trying to reinvent history. So he's gone out on the offensive, trying to explain away, again, his situation from 2019, but not only that, he's effectively attacked people who attacked him at the time and threw him under the bus because of those failed tests. But unfortunately for Miller, there are people who have been following the situation from the beginning, and I'm one of them. And I've done a number of videos since, and I will make one available at the end of this one, and that goes back to an interview he did in June 2019 with IFL TV, where he made a number of claims, including for the first time that he had a medical procedure for HGH and EPO. But I'll come to that because some of his comments in this story, this article, or these comments that he's made, don't add up and gel with other statements he's previously made. So let's get to Miller's comments and then proceed to take them apart. So he is told bonuscodebets.co.uk, hard work is number one. There are no shortcuts, but sometimes you are going to get lazy and you don't do your homework, and that's when it's going to cost you, like it did for me. You've got to ask tons of questions. Be careful who you surround yourself with and who you deal with. Be 100% genuine and honest with yourself and your mistakes to get better and to be better. Okay, so good so far. You need to know when to move on from certain situations to the next, and always put yourself in a positive frame of mind, because negativity only draws negativity. And the more you are around negative people and negative energy, the more you are going to be brought down. We were going to train all the way from January to June to get ready for AJ. But I was dealing with a recurring issue with my elbow. I was dealing with VADA and going to see their specialists and doctors. I was seeing 2 different specialists and a psychiatrist that VADA wanted me to go see to make sure whatever I was taking was part of the protocol. It was an injury that I had for a long time. I just wanted to be 100% for the fight, 100% healthy, so we looked at alternatives to get things done, and one thing led to another. I was seen by the doctors, and by the time I got signed off to do certain things towards the injury, I took a stem cell shot, which is known to have healing properties that are very strong, and that's when we had the positive tests of those components. I begged for a third test after the drug compounds that came out a week before. I was a clean guy. That's when I came out and said, this is where I got it from. And it was a big misunderstanding. People on my team will understand that, but when you don't have a conversation with someone and they go straight to the camera like what Eddie Hearn did, it's bad. It makes the fighter look bad. I was heartbroken when I got that information. I called VADA, I called the doctors and said, listen, this is what's going on. They could tell you. I was open throughout camp, which I was doing, all of my supplements, and even they were kind of shocked because I was so vocal on doing the right thing. But that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. It was a learning experience, and it taught me a lot about myself, the people that I have around me. Okay, so there is a little bit more. I'll get to that in a moment. But first, I just want to sort of get into some of what happened. So the timeline of events is April 2019. There's a first test that comes out, GW 1516. And days after that, there is 2 more. And those 2 more came from the same day. One was a blood test, one was a urine sample. And when Miller talks about pushing for the third test, it really is nonsense. He says, I begged for a third test after the drug compounds that came out. See, the thing is, with the 3 failed tests, they were all taken, sometime in March. The tests were already taken weeks before, and the results were going to be what they were. But also, he starts to talk about the stem cell shot and blah, but the way and the language that he's using there is rather ambiguous, because he's trying to imply that doctors signed off on him having a shot of human growth hormone and EPO as part of some sort of medical procedure. And really, he is dancing on the head of a pin there. He's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. There is no way that was ever going to get signed off, and it was not signed off. So he is honestly trying to sort of fleece us there And honestly, he is being dishonest. But not only that, he did not publicly make any of those comments regarding that medical procedure till months later. That is a fact. The first time he introduced that he had an elbow injury, that he was taking a medical shot that included HGH and EPO, which only could have been injected, was in June. The first time that he really went public with that was in the IFL TV interview, which was his first attempt to try and rehabilitate his image. It was a big sit-down interview with Kugan Cassius. So some of what he's doing here with talking about these tests and it was a misunderstanding and all this sort of stuff, it's nonsense. He failed these tests. He had multiple substances in his system. At the end of the day, it's on him. And you notice he's trying to shift blame and place, on others that there was some people and other bits and people that he shouldn't have trusted and yada, 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 all sorts of stuff like that. But it's on him. So when he is coming out trying to say that others shouldn't have come out so hard against him, what was he expecting when he fails 3 tests, 3 separate tests? And even though 2 were taken on the same day, one was a blood test, one was a urine test, they were testing for different things. And as the results showed, one came out, with EPO, one with GW1516, and also within one of those tests was the HDH. So he had 3 different tests. The first one at GW1516, and then the other 2, the blood test and urine test from a separate day. I think it was like March 30th or something like that in 2019. He had multiple substances, a concoction of all 3 across those 2 tests. And as it is, Jarrell Miller has previously tried to minimize the number of tests that he failed, tried to say that the 2 that were taken on the same day, but one was blood and one was urine, he's trying to effectively take that down to 1 test. And that's what he tried to do in the IFL TV interview. And my analysis of that, I will have that up at the end of this video, as I mentioned, so you can sort of check out what he was trying to say at the time in June 2019. But let's face it, Jarrell Miller hasn't fought since 2018. He failed those tests which were taken in March but announced in April. And now he is more than a year removed from that. He lost the Joshua fight. He is in recovery mode. He's trying to rebuild his image. He's trying to make out that, he's a bit of a victim in this. But the fact is, he is responsible in any strict liability system for what's in his system. But to suggest that VADA was going to sign off and was aware that there was a shot that had all these substances in it, he really is trying to confuse the issue. And why is he doing that? He is doing that because he wants fans to believe him and get back on board. But sorry, Jarrell, you have actually messed up here to such a degree. And even to begin with, you tried to lie, deflect, and say that you would be vindicated, ultimately having to come out and say that you'd messed up, you'd made some mistakes. And let's talk about another fact, the GW1516. So we haven't had an explanation of how that was in Jarrell Miller's system. So for him to go on about all these other bits and pieces and trying to square away with a neat and tidy little answer that it was a medical procedure for the HGH and human growth hormone shot, which, I've spoken to various performance enhancing drugs experts who have said that is actually laughable to them, that would be a cocktail that he would be having for that sort of injury. That is the advice that I have had. So I ain't buying what he's trying to sell. And if anyone else is, well, more power to you. But I think he's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. And this is about rehabilitating his image because he wants to come back. He's joined Top Rank. And obviously they want to move on from this. But the thing is, he can't let it go in the sense that he can't take it on the chin. He's trying to make excuses and essentially make out that others, were involved here, that it wasn't really his fault, and that people were aware of what was happening and it was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. What a joke. So just before we wrap up, so we'll get to these final statements by Miller. So he says, a lot of fighters were talking junk. Andre Ward, Billy Joe Saunders, Tony Bellew, Deontay Wilder, and Eddie Hearn. A lot of fighters were running their mouths who didn't know about the situation. Deontay was running his mouth and his brother got popped for something. Like I said before, I wouldn't jump to conclusions and you got to do your homework. When Dillian Whyte got in trouble, I said don't jump to conclusions, you got to do your homework. 99% of fighters are talking straight BS and they have no structure in what they're saying. I am number 2 in the world. The only reason I'm not number 1 is because I don't have a belt. I know I'm a better fighter than all of these guys. I'm better than AJ, I'm better than Tyson, I'm better than Deontay. I only call myself number 2 because I don't have that belt. I'm going to be world champ. I'll always try to be someone who I would look up to. But what I've learned is, if you understand where the bad guy is coming from, then you can understand life, because nobody on top of their game is really the good guy. They may look like the model citizen, but there's always something going on. Where I come from, 80% of the time, the villain always wins, because when you do everything by the book, you leave your hands tied. You have to be that person who sees outside of the box. If multimillionaires play by the rules, they wouldn't be where they're at. So with some of these promoters like Eddie Hearn, they say these crazy, outrageous things. They don't play by the rules all the time. That's a fact. And you might remember in reference to Hearn, effectively, when it first came out, he said, if you can't be clean, lose my number. But in respect of his relationship with Jarrell Miller, ahead of that Joshua fight, he had handed Miller, easy fights in the form of Bogdan Dinu and Thomas Adamek on a 3-fight DAZN deal, and then gives him Anthony Joshua. So Eddie Hearn had been extremely good to Jarrell Miller, who messed his own chance up. And I think some of what he's doing here, as I've sort of mentioned, is deflecting. He's trying to make out that others, are involved or culpable in some way, or statements that they've made also reflect poorly on them. But as he said, sometime after that, he said, when you're pointing the finger, you've got 3 pointing back at you. But the thing in this situation is, Miller has only got himself to blame. And that's the thing that seems to be lost on him, because there seems to be all sorts of, even though he wants to say, I messed up, this was my mistake, there's all these other accompanying statements that kind of suggest that he doesn't want it to be his fault, that he's implying that others gave him bad advice, or, effectively it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. It doesn't work that way. And when he references the Dillian Whyte situation, and I do recall, he came out in support of Whyte and said, I don't want to judge this guy, yada, yada, yada. But the thing is, he really couldn't, because after his situation, having one of the most outrageous PED cases in recent memory, if he had to come out hard against Whyte, he would have absolutely got demolished and bulldozed by fans. He had nowhere to go in that situation. But in my view, Miller would have had a different slant on things had he never failed a test. He would have been ripping into Dillian Whyte. And other athletes like Deontay Wilder, who's had 3 people fail tests on his watch when he was a champion, of course they're going to have a position on that. So some of this is sour grapes by Jarrell Miller, and obviously some of the explanations don't really hold up to water as well. The thing is, he did something, he got caught, he paid the price. Some people are going to say something, and he's not going to like it. And obviously with the situation as it is, it's all his own fault. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.